Hello everyone, and welcome to your special bonus feature of this week's Movie Moan podcast, because we have a very special interview now with somebody very, very special. A few weeks ago, I picked up the recently released and long time coming DVD set for Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future, and I hadn't seen much of the show, but I remembered it, and I had the toys, and the DVD itself had gotten such amazing reviews, particularly for its special feature content, and the Drew Struzan cover art on the front of the box was just the icing on the cake. So I picked it up, I watched it, and I was blown away, and I just had to tell somebody. So I emailed our good friend Robert Meyer Burnett, who's been on the show a few times and is coming on again, just to tease you. And I told him, because I knew he was friends with the creator of the show, Gary Goddard, and wouldn't you know it, no sooner had I sent Robert that email, but he replied to me, "Hey, the guy who produced that DVD set is sitting right next to me. He said thanks." What? Okay, wow. And why don't you have him on the show, Phil? I said, okay. So I emailed him, and he's here tonight. So please give a warm welcome to filmmaker, producer, and special feature maestro, Mr. Roger Lay Jr. Hello, sir.
How are you guys? Thanks for having me, and thanks for the kind words about the Captain Power set. That was really funny because I was actually sitting with Rob editing, and he got your message, and I was thrilled because a lot of, like you said, a lot of people don't remember Captain Power. People kind of remember the whole thing that you had the little ship and you would fire at the screen, and sometimes it worked, other times it didn't work. So I was really excited that you actually enjoyed the set because it was a huge labor of love. I mean, if you see it, you can tell that it's just everyone involved in the making of that show was really proud of what they did, and unfortunately the show never really got the opportunity it deserved, and so they were all excited to come back and participate on that set, and I am glad you enjoyed it, sir. Thank you for the kind comments.
Oh, you're more than welcome. I mean, it's just the fact that living in England, I had a very limited exposure to the show at that time.
Yeah, and you guys got it like a year and a half after it went off the air, because there was the whole thing with the interactivity and the whole thing of selling product and Mattel being involved. So I think there was something with your broadcasting regulations in England where they wouldn't air it until that whole thing was cleared up because of Action for Children's Television and all the hoopla that surrounded the show and the whole thing of, are you making a show to sell toys, or are you really making a TV show here, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, England was one of the last markets to get the show, and by the time you guys got it, it'd been canceled, so.
Well, I think the first question, I mean, I can't imagine that Mattel or Gary Goddard received many letters from overseas, but from your perspective, what kind of following has the show gained over the years? Has there been a really great demand for this release, or has it really just come up on people out of nowhere and everybody just said, "Oh, I remember that show, I'll give it a go"?
No, there was a huge demand. I mean, it wasn't like everyone was screaming for it, but the cult group of people who loved it, really wanted it, and also because, the head writer on the show was Joe Straczynski, who went on to create Babylon 5, write a bunch of cool movies like The Changeling and Thor for Marvel. And Joe has a huge following, and people who are really big fans of his work in Babylon 5 knew that Captain Power was his first TV show ever. He wrote a great deal of the episodes, and he was the head writer. And he even actually mentions Babylon 5 in an episode of Captain Power, which is an interesting little bit of geek trivia there. There's a character called Tank, who's a genetically engineered super soldier.
Uh-huh.
And he mentions in one of the episodes that he comes from the Babylon 5 genetic labs in, somewhere in some location. And Joe actually said to me, I was already working out Babylon 5 in my head, so I thought, what if it'd be cool if I plant this little seed, not that any of the two shows have anything to do with each other. He just did it as a little bit of a joke. But yeah. So there were a lot of people who were interested in it. I was a fan of the show. That's how I got involved in the whole thing. I watched it when it first aired. I must have been like 6 or 7 years old. And to me and to a lot of my friends, it was kind of like a gateway drug to science fiction. Because when you're 6 years old, you're not as aware of all these cool things, and then you watch that show and you're exposed to all these cool ideas and cool science fiction concepts that just really blow you away at 6 years of age. And even as an adult, a lot of grown-ups watch the show because the show was, like I said, it was a show that had a name that supported a kid's toy line, but it was written as an adult science fiction show. So it was that weird thing where they couldn't figure out what it was and how to sell it, basically. Who do we sell it to kids or to adults? So I was a fan of the show, and I loved it. I really loved it. It was always one of these things that I thought, you know what, everything has come back. Everything has been released, and this show hasn't really had an opportunity. To me, it was like the holy grail. It was like, when are they going to pluck it out of oblivion and bring it back? And I loved it. And interestingly enough, I was working a couple of years ago. I produced a science fiction film for Ray Bradbury, a film called Chrysalis, which was based on one of his stories. And after we did that, we started working on another project together, and the guy who was going to be our production designer on that was Bill Stout, who's a very well-known fantasy artist, illustrator guy. And he was Gary Goddard's production designer on the Masters of the Universe film, on the He-Man movie with Frank Langella and Dolph Lundgren. So when Bill and I became friends, I said, you know what, I'd love to talk to Gary Goddard. I'm a fan of his stuff. I love Captain Power. So Bill put me in touch with Gary. First time I ever meet with Gary and sit down to have lunch with him, I just said, look, what the hell's going on with Captain Power? How come you've never done anything with this? And
he said, it's nice to meet you too.
And he said, nice to meet you. What's your name again, son? So he said, he tells me how the reason nothing had happened is because he spent years and years negotiating between Mattel and his old company, Landmark Entertainment, the whole thing of the rights, who owned it, and what can we do with it. And finally, after many, many years of legal intervention and negotiating, everything had reverted back to him, which was always the original plan for him to keep the show and keep the IP, the intellectual property of the show. But it just takes forever. And then he removed himself from his previous company, and now he had another company, so he had to move that over to that company. So it took forever. So when I finally sat down with him, he said, you know what, it's free and clear now. I have all the rights. And I just said, can I do it? Can I bring it back? So that's kind of what we set out to do, and we felt that, obviously there was an audience there who was expecting it. We needed to put out the original show, and we needed to do something special. I wanted to do the whole set with an entire bonus disc of special stuff, and I wanted to do a feature-length documentary, because if you watch it, you realize that the history of the show is very much a major part of the history of kids' television and everything that went down with, Action for Children's Television and toy companies getting in the entertainment industry. And now, you have Hasbro with its own network, the Hub, and you have them producing movies with Paramount. Back then, you couldn't do any of that, and it was very tricky and iffy to have a toy company get involved in an entertainment property, because it was this whole thing of, are you going to sell toys, or are you going to try and monopolize everything here? So we made the documentary and got the DVDs out, and it sold incredibly well. We did not expect, our distributor was even saying he did not expect a 25-year-old catalog title to do this well, and they ran out of copies like by the end of we came out December 6th, and by the end of the Christmas season, Walmart was sold out, Target was sold out, so they had to go into the second printing really quickly, which was great.
And just so people know what we're talking about, this documentary that Roger has produced for the set, we're not talking some little 20-minute featurette here. We're talking about a 90-minute documentary which answers every possible question you possibly would have had about the show. Even if you're not familiar with the show, it is such a fascinating story, because we're not talking about the usual kind of show that's just picked up by a network because someone pitches it to them. We're talking about a show that was funded by a toy company, that was produced by them to integrate a new technology that they'd invented for their toys, and the battle between that and a group of talented people like Gary and Michael who wanted to make something really, really good. And what's great about the documentary, I must say, Roger, is how candid it is. It has that independently produced feel about it. It doesn't feel like it was sanctioned by Mattel, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, no, because it wasn't sanctioned by Mattel.
Exactly, yeah.
They have no involvement whatsoever anymore. It's Gary owns everything, and we did it through my company and his company. We just joined forces together and did it all ourselves, and then we met with a couple of DVD distribution companies, including Shout Factory, who is very well known for releasing G.I. Joe, Transformers, and a lot of these kind of 80s nostalgia titles.
Yes.
But what we wanted was the freedom to deal with a company that would say, deliver everything you want to deliver, and we put it out. We didn't want any kind of interference from a company in terms of what the final product would be, how it would be distributed, And we found this great company, VSC, Video Services Corp, which had just started releasing a lot of cool classic TV show stuff. And they loved the show. They loved they loved what we wanted to do, and they were willing to basically say, deliver what you want to deliver, and we'll put it out. So that's kind of what we did. And it's cool because you really get a sense of what it took to try and make that show, and all the difficulties when you're trying to do something with, Mattel being involved. Storytellers like Gary and Joe Straczynski trying to make a really good show. Then you have to add the whole interactivity thing, which Mattel said you have to put 2 minutes of interactivity into the show. Then it's the first show ever to have CGI. Back then, it's not like now where everything has CGI. Back then, CGI had never been used to create characters that were going to interact with live action people. So it's a really fascinating look at a very unique moment in television history that most people are not even aware of.
I did have one question about something that wasn't included on the set, but something I remember specifically from that time, Roger. I don't know if you remember, but the toys, the training tapes, yeah. You took it out of my mouth. Was there any possibility of including, just for people who don't know what we're talking about, if you bought the Jets, which was my experience, the toys came out pretty much the same time as they did in the US, and I got the Jet, and it came with this training tape which had live action links done by the actors on the show using the sets and all the costumes and the special effects, but most of the show consisted of this, I guess, Japanimation type training stuff when you just point the Jet and score points and stuff like that, and I think I still have that tape somewhere. I even think it's on YouTube, but was there any possibility of including that?
Well, we wanted to, but like I said, we had to find all the elements, by the way, which that's a whole story. That's another documentary, because with the whole thing between the split between Mattel and Gary's company back in the day, and the fact that they were doing the show and doing all the post-production in Canada and then distributing it through MTS here in the US, those master tapes were all over the place. Some we couldn't even find. We were like a month and a half away from a street date. We're finishing up authoring discs, and we still didn't have some of the masters to some of the episodes. That's how crazy it got. I had to look through stuff that was vaulted in Canada, stuff that was vaulted here in LA, stuff that was vaulted in New York. The final couple of tapes I found in a vault in New Jersey, actually. Like the equivalent of the Dead Letters office for videotapes.
Right.
That production companies never claimed. So with the time we had, I was just never able to find the masters of the training tapes. What we had was just the VHS tapes that you could buy on the shelves back in the day, the ones that came with the toys and the ones you could buy. So we're like, well, what's the point of putting a low-quality version of this on the tape? And also we were running on the disc, and we were running low on disc space, and we had a bunch of other really cool special features, like that Season 2 piece that tells you what the second season would have been like, and that's something that we didn't want to drop because no one has heard of those stories, whereas the tapes, you could just buy the old tapes or find it on YouTube, because we were not going to bring anything new to the party. We didn't have the master, so it wouldn't have looked any better than what's out there. So we just made the decision to just not include it and just put all the other cool stuff. So, but you know what? I was very surprised at the amount of fans who gave us crap over that. Who were like, "How come you didn't put the training tapes?" It's like, I remember when it came out on our Facebook page, a bunch of fans were upset about that, but we didn't have the masters. Simple as that.
That's fair enough. And of course, the other question you always get thrown back at you by ungrateful types is, why didn't you release it on Blu Ray? Why didn't you high def convert it? It's like, well, that costs money.
You know how much that cost? And I could tell you now, because I'm working on that for Star Trek The Next Generation right now. So that's an incredibly time-consuming and expensive process. That's rebuilding the show, which is what's happening on Star Trek Next Generation, where we're going back to the original film camera negatives and rescanning in high definition and rebuilding and recompositing all the effects stuff. Now, the good thing about Next Generation is that all that stuff on Next Gen was filmed with miniatures and models and film cameras, so you have negative of the ship and all these elements. On Captain Power, most of the effects stuff was CGI. Sauron, Blastar, all these characters were early CGI creations, so we don't have a film master of that. There would maybe be a computer file somewhere, and God only knows where that is. So
now we'll go back to Captain Power and Trek in a bit, but there was something else that I just need to talk about, because I got to tell you, folks, this is the film I'm probably most anticipating this year. Like, screw Batman, screw Skyfall. The film I want to see more than any other this year is Toy Masters. Now, for the record, for people who don't know, because I don't think actually Robert, when we had him on, talked about it on air. So if you could just tell the good folks what Toy Masters is, this documentary that you're working on.
Toy Masters is, like you said, it's a documentary, but it basically tries to solve this little mystery that's been going on for years in the geek fandom community of who created He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe was a huge toy line, probably one of the biggest toy lines ever, which generated over $1 billion back in the 80s for Mattel. And over the years, all these toy makers, designers, toy inventors have been going out there and saying, I created He-Man. There's a guy, Roger Sweet, who claims he created He-Man, and he made the first prototype. There's another guy, Mark Taylor, who was a visual designer at Mattel, who says, no, I created the first sketch ever. I drew him out. I stylized him, you know. And Roger wrote a book. Mark has gone on and done tons of interviews. Another guy, Paul Cleveland. All these guys have been just duking it out for years. But Mattel has never really said, this guy created it, or that other guy. Because really, a toy company is not set up like a film studio, you know? Mm-hmm. All of these guys work for Mattel, and who cares? It's not their He-Man, it's Mattel's He-Man. So, a few years ago, I read a book that Roger Sweet, the guy who claims to have originated He-Man, wrote. And I found it so interesting that I told my friend Corey Landis, who's also a huge He-Man fan, about it. And we said, you know what? How come no one has... And we'd just seen King of Kong. I don't know if you guys have seen King of Kong.
Oh, yes.
We had just seen that, and we're like, this is kind of the same story, that rivalry over glory, over a victory, you know. So we started interviewing these people. We started flying around and going and interviewing them. We didn't know if we'd have anything. We just thought it's interesting. It might be something good. If it's not, we just put it away, you know. And we ended up filming like 60 hours of footage and finding everyone, all the employees, getting access to all the documents, all the imagery, all the sketches, and we put a trailer together about a year ago. And we premiered it at Comic-Con last year, and it just, fans went crazy. We premiered it in Hall H, which is the gigantic room. I like to call it the airplane hangar. And right after that, the web was just buzzing with this thing, and now we're doing it. We're finishing it up, actually. We're supposed to finish up the rough cut by this Tuesday, actually, because we have a very, very prestigious film festival wanting to premiere it in July. So we are trying to make that happen, and it's pretty fascinating. I mean, this is something that started out as a little pet project, and we're like, we don't know if we have anything here. After 2 years of working on it, I can tell you we have a really fascinating movie in our hands here.
And I've read that book by Roger Sweet, and I can't wait to see that. This actually looks like, unlike the King of Kong, the trailer seems to tease that this story might end in physical violence. These guys seem to want to kill each other. I can't wait to see it. You have to see this trailer, guys. I've got to tell you. I'll provide a link to it in the show notes. So I take it then that there's no firm release date yet on the rest of the world getting to see the film yet.
No, not yet, because we're still finishing it up. We haven't finished it yet. We're working on it. We're trying to finish it as fast as we can. But you know, I'm jumping right now from the Star Trek project to the Captain Power reboot that I'm producing with Gary Goddard. Toy Masters, another film I just finished up, another documentary I finished up. So it's like we're like literally, I'm spread so thin right now that I'm trying my best to get it all finished in time. But I can tell you that we're doing everything we can to premiere it in July at this very big film festival. And once that is confirmed, I will send you the info so you guys can check it out. And then, then we'll see. I have a couple of distributors interested in it already. But again, like with the Captain Power thing and everything I do, I just like to finish the film before I get involved with distribution, because you even said it yourself. It just seems like it's something that was done without interference, you know, and we tell the story we want to tell, you know.
And just the other question I had regarding He-Man was actually the thing which led me to actually email Robert that first time wasn't just about Captain Power, but we just heard the news and he told us about the possibility of there being a special edition re-release and Blu Ray of the Masters of the Universe movie that Gary directed. And he told us about these special features that were going to be on it, which sounded too good to be true. I wish you'd been here, Roger, when he told me what was going to be on this set, because Jamie will back me up, I almost died.
Dude, it was going to be amazing. It was going to be amazing what we had. I mean, if you saw the Captain Power set, it was going to be that level of complexity brought to the movie, you know?
Well, Roger, just so we can get it out of your mouth and I don't get any facts wrong, what was it going to include? Is it permanently dead? And if so, why?
Well, it's not really dead. We're going to salvage some of this stuff, but the project we had in mind is really dead. The project we had in mind was to, that same treatment we gave Captain Power with that 25th anniversary set, give to Masters, because it is the 25th anniversary of the movie this year. So there was going to be a new a new high-def version of the film, clearly on Blu Ray. Then we're going to have a kick-ass commentary track with Gary Goddard and Frank Langella, who plays Skeletor.
See, that's the bit where
but moderated by Bryan Singer, who directed X-Men,
right.
Superman Returns, all these great movies, and who's a big, fan of this kind of stuff as well. Bryan had agreed to do it. We were ready to roll. We were going to do it. Then we were going to have the in-depth documentary on the making of the movie, sort of like the Captain Power one, like Out of the Ashes. Then we were going to have a reunion piece with Dolph Lundgren, Gary Goddard, Frank Langella, Bill Stout, who production designed it, Richard Edlund, who did the effects. We were going to call it the Masters Summit, and we were going to have all of them together in an on-camera reunion piece that I was going to direct also. And we were going to try and somehow give fans a peek at the alternate opening to the film, some sequences that were cut out, and the alternate ending, because we had found a lot of the conceptual art, a lot of the script pages from the early draft of the script pages that Gary rewrote with new sequences that he was going to put into the film, but then they couldn't do because of budgetary limitations. And we were going to do all that as well. So it was going to be amazing. And art by Ralph McQuarrie that people haven't seen. We found some conceptual stuff by Ralph McQuarrie that people haven't seen. Ralph, who did, the Star Wars concept art for Lucas. Bill Stout, Claudia Massoli, who's a great fantasy artist. All that stuff we were going to do, and Warner's was kind of gung-ho about it, and we were going about it for months and months. Finally, they decided at the last minute, it's kind of a catalog title, and we don't want to put a lot of money into this, so we're just going to release the movie on Blu Ray bare bones, and we're going to port over your old commentary track that you did 20 years ago almost for the Laserdisc. So that's what fans are going to get. It's a big FU from Warner Home Video. You're going to get...
Can I ask, sir, can you tell us, or are you not at liberty to say, what was the alternate ending and opening that got cut?
Oh, there was a great sequence in Eternia that Gary couldn't put together, and a lot of it took place in the caverns under Grayskull, because they're all of a sudden the city has been attacked, and they have to get into the castle somehow, and there would have been a great sequence in the caverns of Eternia where you even get to see the Snake Men.
Snake Men. I remember them.
And there was going to be a big battle sequence with like the things flying into Castle Grayskull, and like an aerial battle, and it's just going to be amazing. But just Gary, unfortunately, they didn't give him the resources he needed, And the ending was going to be much longer. There was going to be this big battle on Castle Grayskull, because the way Bill Stout built that set, it had different layers to it. And if you look, there's like that abyss under the bridge area, and then there were going to be more areas under that, and they were going to go sword fighting all the way under to that thing, But Gary, they just gave him a day to film the battle sequence. He couldn't do a lot of all that stuff. It's interesting because there's another great story there, and that's what you were going to get in the documentary, how the He-Man toy line sold $400 million in 1986 as Gary's going into production, or as he's going into pre-production on the film. In 87, when the movie is being finished up, or actually being filmed, the movie sold, I think it was, the action figures went down to $40 million in sales. It's a huge decline. So all of a sudden, everyone's pulling out of the action figure business, and Mattel is freaking out. They don't have, they've lost all this money. Canon, the studio that was making the film, went bankrupt. So Gary has to finish a film without a budget, with, payroll not coming through, so his vision was incredibly truncated. I mean, that whole idea of why do you think most of the film takes place on planet Earth rather than planet Eternia? Because it's cheaper to shoot on Earth than on Eternia, So, but Gary had some great ideas, and unfortunately they never made it to the screen, and we were going to try and give fans a peek at that. So, but having said that, even though Warner's is going to move forward with a Blu Ray release of the film, which is bare bones and has nothing in it, and to me it's, like I said, a big FU to the fans, Because we're doing Toy Masters, and I work with Gary now. I mean, we're doing that new Captain Power thing, and we have a couple other projects we're developing together. I've collected all that stuff with him, and I am going to try and put a lot of that on when finally Toy Masters comes out on Blu-ray and DVD. On the special features, I'm going to do a whole section of special features relating to Gary's film, to the making of his film. So that's my plan. So, because people really need to get a sense of the story behind the unmaking of Masters of the Universe.
I love that movie. I saw it as a little kid, and actually I have to relate, I never actually had the toy line. That was my introduction to He-Man. That was actually my only entry into He-Man, but man, I love that movie as a kid. And I actually rewatched it, I couldn't help but rewatch it recently, and maybe it's nostalgia, but man, that movie puts a smile on my face. And
Me too. I love it. I love it.
I put a smile on my, you know what the biggest awe moment is? It's the end credits. I'll be back. You're like, oh, yeah. We didn't get to see that.
Well, you know what? There was going to be a sequel, and there was a script, which I also have. And the script, because the Mastered line just fizzled away completely, and there was not going to be any more product, they changed the script and turned it into CYBORG with Van Damme. Have you seen that movie CYBORG? That horrible movie CYBORG?
I did, and I couldn't for the life of me imagine how that was at one point Masters 2. It doesn't make sense to me at all.
Because Canon was desperate. They just wanted to use the name Masters of the Universe somehow, and it was going to be He-Man battling this cyborg creature thing. So they salvaged whatever half-conceived idea they had and made it into another film.
Of course, there is a documentary that is being made at the moment about the Canon story, the story of Canon films, and
yes.
I'm hoping that they might touch on Masters and maybe even Superman 4 at some point. I don't know.
I don't think they will, because they haven't even reached out to Gary for an interview, or to Joe Morrison or John Weems or Richard Edlund or Bill Stout or any of the people responsible for making that movie. So if they touch on it, I don't know how limited it's going to be, because they haven't talked to any of the players. So.
It seems like an integral part of the story, because that was at the point when Canon was trying to make legitimate, bigger films and failed massively. So,
and then they pretty much lost all their money and had to close the studio.
It's terrible. Well, best of luck with it, Roger. I mean, look, if you need protection, if you need money, anything, me and Jamie will make it happen. I can promise you that. We will do everything.
We need you guys to help spread the word online that Captain Power is coming back, that we are really, really, really seriously working on this thing right now. I'm not kidding. We just brought on 2 incredible science fiction writers to write the pilot, and I can't tell you the names right now. I will be able to very soon, hopefully. But these guys, sci-fi fans, know who they are. You know, they have a really good body of work in television and a lot of really cool sci-fi novels that they've written. So.
Well, Roger, I think the only question I can ask, given that it is such early stages, can you actually tell us anything about what form the story of the new show is going to take? Like, is it that horribly overused word reboot? Is it the second season that we never got? Can you tell us anything at this stage?
Yes. It's the story we love. You know, it's the same concept of the original show. It's just presented with a little bit of a different sensibility now for a new audience, and you actually get an origin story this time around. Because if you remember the original show, you kind of jump in media res. You know, yes. The first episode is just him rescuing that friend of his, and you don't know who he is. You don't know why Lord Dredd is Lord Dredd. You know, you don't know anything about the whole thing of why does he want to digitize people. You kind of later on, near the end of the show, they did that flashback episode of Summoning of Thunder, which fills in some of the gaps, but not really. There's still a lot of stuff missing. We're starting in with our story opens with the moment that changes everything on the face of the planet and creates this outcome of the Metal Wars and humanity as a band of refugees. And Lord Dredd, who is this guy? Why is he this way? Why is he so obsessed with, perfecting human beings? You know, you get an answer to those things, and you jump in to the point where it's an introduction to the story. And same characters. We haven't gone around and made one of the characters a woman or anything like that. It's Captain Jonathan Power. It's Pilot. It's Scout. It's Lord Dredd. It's Hawk. Same characters, same guys. But you get to see their origin this time around, and like I said, same mechanics, same overall storyline, but told in a very cool, unique way. And now we have all this great technology that he didn't have back then. So there's a lot of concepts that Gary came up with that were left on the on the design, were abandoned early on in the design stage because CGI was not there yet. They were just kind of experimenting with it on a weekly basis. Now we know what CGI can do, and now we're going to be able to do these things that Gary had envisioned originally. So it's pretty exciting, and there's going to be some connective tissue to the old show in a way that's very organic, that fans, I think, are going to love. And Tim Dunnigan is involved, so that's all I can say.
I haven't guessed about that. Is he playing Captain Power's dad this time? That's my guess.
I can't tell you anything.
You can't. That's what I'd try.
But it's, it's in essence that same storyline. It's just now, hopefully, with a bit of a, with the opportunity to really delve into it and further develop it. And we're trying to go for a 13-episode run. See if we can pull that off. And we have a great company who I can't reveal yet, but we have a great company who's done some great work on television as our co-producing partner on this, and a great team of people. Especially, like I said, I'm really excited about our writers, showrunners. They know science fiction and they know the genre, and they've worked on shows that I love. So it's exciting. It's a very exciting time.
I'm going to run into my toy box and pull out the Power Jet again. I hope it still works with the show. I hope you'll do that for me, Roger, just for me, just so I can...
Well, we won't do the interactivity or anything like that, but we've talked about really cool things to do with the web and with app-based technology. And like I said, our writers are very savvy about science fiction, and they've also worked with companies like NASA, because they also write nonfiction books about things like the space program, and they're very savvy about that, and we've had discussions about, we're not going to do the interactivity the way it was done back then, because clearly it didn't really work, and we don't want to have anything get in the way of the storytelling. I think one of the bigger mistakes of the last show is that you had a show that creatively was firing on all cylinders, but you depended on the sales of toys and of a brand new kind of little technological scheme to keep the show on the air, and in essence, the show got canceled not because it wasn't a good show or because people weren't watching it. I mean, that show was beating Star Trek: The Next Generation in a lot of major markets in the U.S. because they were on the same time slot. And so the show was working. It was just a stupid toy thing that wasn't working, and when the toy thing isn't working, the Mattel pulled the plug on it. So we have to make sure that this time around we don't depend on anything other than the show and the storytelling. So, and I've told Gary many times, and he's like, absolutely, this is, because believe me, Gary's a guy he was like my personal Walt Disney when I was growing up, because I loved Captain Power, I loved the Masters movie, I used to love going to Universal Studios over the summer to go ride on all these attractions that Gary has created. So when I finally met him, I'm like, dude, you created all these amazing things, and it feels like at some point, always, everything you've done kind of gets truncated or prevented from reaching its potential because of things that are that have nothing to do with your creative ability and what you've set out to accomplish, and it's very sad,
I bet he agreed with you.
Oh, he did. He agreed. So that's why he said, when we do this thing, let's put it together independently. Let's find a co-producing partner. Let's find the writers we want to have. Let's put the package together, and then we go and sell it, because now it's easier to do that, because you have all these foreign markets that you can pre-sell the show to. You can go, the syndication market is different than it was back then, and also there's all these cable venues that didn't exist back then, so there's a lot of possibilities to put the show together in a way that we can keep that freedom,
And obviously the reception to the DVD set must have given you an amazing boost of confidence that you're onto something good here. You're doing the right thing by bringing it back.
Absolutely. We felt it's the right time. The audience is there. The fans are there. The audience has kind of grown in a way that the kind of show we're trying to make, and the kind of show that he made back in the day, which was very serialized. That show really had an overall arc. That's what people expect these days. Back then, Mattel was syndicating the show, so they kept fighting, do standalone episodes, don't continue a story thread, all these things that he wanted to do, now we can do, because now that's what's expected, so it's great. It's the perfect time to do it. And when we went out and started saying we were going to do this, the reaction we got from executives and production companies was huge. We did not expect that people would go, yeah, we want to do this. Let's take a meeting. And that's kind of what's been happening. So it's the right time to do it. So please help us out. Get the fans behind it. Get the online gang to support it, because I think we have something very special here.
Send your dollars, folks. Send your dollars.
Yeah.
I'll put a little PayPal link at the bottom of the thing. Will be good. Well, Roger, I guess that's a good point to wrap it up. Sir, I know that we are tearing you away from your very busy schedule and those next-gen Blu-rays, and we talked about this off air, but folks, if for some reason Season 1 of next-gen Blu-ray doesn't make its street date, blame me, because I've been tearing Roger away from his work, I've been tearing Robert away from his work. It's entirely my fault, so you can blame me for that, but obviously, I'll let you go back to it. So, Sir, just thank you so much for your time, for sharing so much fascinating information with us, and I hope we can have you back very soon.
I'd love to come back, and I'll stay for the whole show next time because, like I said, I'm in a little bit of a time crunch right now, but I'd love to come back anytime. And hopefully by then, I can tell you more about what's happening with the new Captain Power. I can tell you more about Toy Masters. I can actually talk about Next Gen because we'll be closer to release date, and we can maybe reveal some of the cool little special feature stuff we've been discovering and finding in the vaults that fans are going to get to see for the first time.
Well, if I don't have a heart attack before then in excitement, then that'll be fantastic. So that's up for this interview. And we'll see you next time, folks. Thank you very much, Roger.
Thanks, guys. My pleasure.